Okay, I will call this Tigard City Council and Local Contract Review Board meeting to order. Deputy City Recorder Raimundo, please call roll.
Councillor Shaw.
Here.
Councillor Singh.
Here.
Councillor Wolf.
Here.
Council President Hu.
Here.
Mayor Lube.
Here.
And Youth Councillor Vogel.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. If everyone will join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. City Council or teammates, do we have any non-agenda items this evening?
Nothing from us, Mayor.
Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to our next item on the agenda, which is proclamations and recognition. And the first item is to proclaim Hispanic Heritage Month. And we do have Demarius Martinez. Okay. For Administrative Projects and Events Coordinator from the Hispanic Metropolitan Chamber to be here. Hi.
Well, no, I'm the Executive Director, so that might confirm that I am the Executive Director of the Hispanic Metropolitan.
Got it. Perfect. Do we, Deputy City Recorder, do we have the item to present?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Thank you for being here to receive the proclamation in person.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Good afternoon, everybody. Nicole Davis-Leon, Executive Director at the Hispanic Metropolitan Chamber. And it is an honor to receive this proclamation stating Hispanic Heritage Month. As you all know, it's a very important moment for us specifically because it just reaffirms the city's commitment and the city's support for our diversity, knowing that diversity is one of our strengths for our communities. And it's a moment to celebrate the many accomplishments and contributions that the Hispanics have made for the community, whether they're scientists, veterans, teachers, and local officials. So I just want to say thank you, and we're very excited and pleased to receive this award or this proclamation on behalf of the Hispanic Metropolitan Chamber. Thank you.
We're so excited to celebrate with you on Friday.
Friday, yes. Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is we were asked to proclaim Constitution Week as September 17th through 23rd, 2023. So that will also be happening this month. And I don't believe we have anybody here to formally request a copy of it. So there is a copy of both proclamations on our agenda for this evening if anyone would like to read them. The next item on our agenda is public comment. We do have multiple ways that we receive public comment during these meetings. If you would like to call in or get on video, please do so now. The call-in number is 503-966-4101, and that will get you in the queue. Thank you. We have Assistant City Manager Nyland here who will report on follow-up to previous public comment. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. I'm here in my kitchen. So at the August 22nd council meeting, we received one written comment and had two people provide comments in person. The written comment asked that we do not lift the open fire restrictions on our current camping ban. The two people who came to town hall talked about time, place, manner. Both were concerned about the wait times to find housing, the shortage of case workers, and access to heat for those living unsheltered. All three members did receive a response, or at least an acknowledgement. Kim Mazel reached out to Just Compassion, specifically Caleb, thanking him yet again for his continued advocacy, and we are thankful for their partnership. Now, my fun fact, or really a reminder. I know that the leaves are changing colors, that the pumpkin spice is the flavor of the month, but I'm here to remind everyone that we still have at least 2 more weeks of summer, so enjoy. Thanks for your time, and that's my report for this evening.
Thank you. I guess this is a divisive question. Can we see by a raise of hands who's had a pumpkin flavored anything yet? I mean, I have. Anyone? Anyone? There's only a couple of us in the room. Hello, my friends. Okay, we did not receive any written public comment by noon on Monday, but we do have several people signed up to come speak in person. When you come up, when your name is called, the mic is already on, so please come up. Daniel Thompson, you are first today, and you've got 2 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, I'm here back again. I've spoken several times regarding public input, and I'm still not receiving, or I'm still not seeing where public input is really being conveyed to the city council. I guess to preface this, my name is Daniel. I live and work in the downtown Tigard area. I've been here for over 40 years, and I've seen how the city of Tigard has ignored its road and infrastructure over the past several decades. And generally, it's been a reactive city to any kind of traffic or roadwork improvement projects. Instead, they were focusing on population growth, especially during the 80s, instead of simultaneously building its infrastructure. And that's where public input has not really been a key factor in this. And I've got a couple of examples. The first one is the Main Street improvement is essentially a disaster. Turning into and out of the post office, you have to actually veer into oncoming traffic to get in or out of the post office. And whoever designed that intentionally did not take vehicles into consideration, their turning radiuses, and instead they focused on improving and widening sidewalks for pedestrians, which is important, but at the expense of cars is a detriment. And I and several others who live in the downtown area have advocated against that project, but our voices were not heard or ignored. And then parking spots also have been eliminated from that Main Street, which limits and reduces the ability to patronize businesses. And then another example is several weeks ago, a community member came here and spoke to council directly regarding the Walnut Street intersection by Fowler. That's been an issue since the 1980s, and I've been an advocate, and several others have also talked about, this even back in the 80s, turning that into a roundabout, but instead all the work and improvement that's been done has just made that whole intersection worse. Again, public input there was generally ignored over whoever road works, their vision of what should be done. And the third point I have is the Hall Boulevard project. I've been to the public input meetings. I've given my input. I've heard other people give their input. And I've seen where Dave has systematically ignored or dismissed the public's input. And then he has sat here before council and said that there's been overwhelming support for his project, whereas there's overwhelming support that Hall Boulevard does need some improvement. It does need an upgrade. But what Dave's agenda for that improvement does not align with the public's interest. Dave has openly proclaimed that he has an agenda of, let me read this, relieving Tigard from the burden of car ownership and making Tigard a walking city, which is kind of counterproductive to people who live up in the Bull Mountain area or other places where you have to have a car to get to work, to get to shopping. And I made a request the last time, a couple of weeks ago, for any kind of documentation on public input, where it's being recorded, where it's being documented. And instead of getting any kind of information on that, I received basically what can be considered just a form letter saying that the city strives to listen to residents so we can better serve the community. Public input solicited for many of the projects and events we produce. The feedback we receive is always reviewed. I don't think it's being reviewed. I think it's being filtered. I think Dave specifically is filtering out and giving you what he wants you to hear, not what the public wants to hear. And I think that's a detriment for the city of Tigard and its future. I again think, or would like to see, where any public input is being documented, where it's being considered, and just to verify that this process is actually happening, that feedback is always being reviewed, because I feel like it's not being reviewed, it's being filtered out and thrown away to forward Dave's own personal agenda, which is not in, I think, the city's best interest. So again, I'd like to find out where public opinion is being documented, where it's being actually reviewed and presented to the council instead of being filtered out.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Next on our agenda is we have Rita Bone. Perfect. Come on up, Rita. Thanks so much for coming. The microphone is still on, and you've got 2 minutes.
Well, thank you all for being here. I just want to take a couple minutes. I've lived in the Tigard area about 3 years. I moved here in 1994 in Lake Oswego, Tualatin. So I've been in the area for a long time, and I really love Tigard. What I've noticed the past 2.5, 3 years I've lived here, I live on the 72nd, the apartment complex on 72nd. And it's a beautiful place, and we know the traffic on 72nd is kind of crazy. The roads are a little narrow. And I took time, and I'll share that with you later, yesterday, and it was a little dangerous because the cars come by pretty quick, the homeless camps on both sides. And I know you guys are all aware of that, or I should say houselessness. I know it changes all the time, but, and so I took some pictures. And the real concern is not only the houselessness that's going on and the drugs that occur with that, but the safety value, not only for the gentleman that was sitting with a guitar halfway out in the road, you know, and thinking we need to get these people some help. And I know through City Connect and other programs that that's available. And my thought was, it's not okay that they're there. I feel for them because I have a son that has mental health issues. So with mental health and addictions, as a parent, he was homeless for a few months many years ago. And so my heart goes out, but what's going on is not okay. And I've had the opportunity to testify in front of the state's Senate Subcommittee on Mental Health and Addictions multiple times, and to tell my story. But what I really want to do here is see what we can do collectively to address this issue. The sooner the better, because it's not a safe place. And I looked at the new ordinance that occurred, I think it was July 1st. And I don't have all my homework together, but I just felt impressed to come and talk to you about this and ask for what can we do as individuals. Just because I don't own a house and I live in an apartment, my landlord and owner of the building is here with me. And we've talked about this a number of times of what can we do? Who do we need to talk to make something happen? And I know it's not an easy situation. And it's easy to point fingers, but the whole thing is, I'm always looking at, being an outlier, but doing outreach and helping others. And so that's why I was on the board of directors for the nonprofit, because I was able to have an impact. And so that's why I'm here tonight, to just stress to you, we really want to make a change here and help those individuals, because I don't think they really want to be there. I don't think they woke up one day and said, oh, I want to be homeless. I've heard the comment before, when I talk about this issue, they say, oh, nobody wants their help. I disagree. They do. They just, if there's mental health issues with the addictions, they can't advocate for themselves. So I feel it's upon me, as someone who can, to make an impact to the city council, because we don't want it to become downtown Portland. I have a daughter that has a restaurant down in the Pearl, and it's horrible what's going on there. We don't want that. We're in Tigard. We're not in downtown Portland. And Portland used to be a beautiful city when I moved here almost 30 years ago, and it's shifted. And so my ask is, can we make it a meeting with you, Mayor Shaw, to find out what we can do? What kind of, strategy and agenda can we come up with to make a difference? So that's what I have to say.
Mayor Lube. Instead of Mayor Shaw, so Mayor Lube.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Not a
I
problem.
see.
That's okay. Thank you for coming up here. Typically, the public comment is not a conversation, and so just know that we've got your questions, and we will be getting back to you with answers and resources.
Thank you.
Yep. The next individual we have coming up is Richard Casanelli.
Yes, good job.
Thank you. Welcome. Come on up. You have
Thank
2
you.
minutes.
Thank you for letting me speak today. And as Rita just mentioned, I am the owner of the apartment complex that she lives in on 72nd Avenue. It's 11740 Southwest 72nd. So basically, we're across from the Winco Shopping Center and the stairwell that comes up from there. And developed the property about 3 years ago, and I develop it, but I own it. I also live there too, and I've lived there from day one. So, and as Rita has mentioned too, since the apartment complex has been developed, the houselessness problem has seemed to increase in this whole area, whether it be around the Walmart, behind the McDonald's, by the Tigard Cinemas, and some of the areas around the Winco Shopping Center, especially in the back, that are pretty hidden from view. And our concern, my concern, is for my tenants and future tenants, that they feel safe in this community and they feel like this is where I want to be. This is a walkable, livable area, And also, as a developer, I'm also interested in doing future development in the area, and this concerns me gravely, as any developer would in this kind of a situation. So, and it seems like this new ordinance, it sounds terrific, but I'm not sure it's being enforced as far as I can tell, as far as the timing where they have to be gone from 7 a.m. to, is it 9 p.m., I think, during the day. And so, and as Rita pointed out, some of them are very close to the road. There's a safety impact there. And then there's also just a refuse, And part of the reason I came today too was I see it getting worse. It's not getting better, it's getting worse. And I want to do whatever we can do. If I can help, that's great, to make this, go in the right direction. I know it's a very hard, difficult topic to deal with, and there's restrictions on how it's implemented and how you can reach out. I understand all that. So anyway, that's all I came to say. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We appreciate you being here and your advocacy. The next item on the agenda is phone-in or video public comment. Network Administrator Vang, are there any phone callers in the queue or anyone wishing to comment by video this evening?
There are no callers in queue and no request for video.
Okay, thank you so much. The next item on the agenda is the administrative report, and we will turn it over to City Manager Reimer.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, members of the community, and my teammates. Just a few updates. First is I want to say thanks to our HR team as well as our police team for being at the 23rd Annual Diversity Employment Day a week or two ago. And the theme was Getting America Back to Work. And it says this event brings Portland's major employers with thousands of qualified diverse professionals with the aim to recruit, promote, and reaffirm their commitment to diversity in the workplace. So I wanted to say kudos to them because the first thing that the leadership team decided to focus on in our racial equity action plan that will soon be adopted by the council was really looking at our team and our workforce and what efforts could we take. And so efforts like this obviously are helpful in that. So I just want to say thanks again to our HR and our PD teammates taking time out of their day to be at that event. Speaking of hiring new teammates, we're also happy to announce the hiring of a new lateral police officer, Benjamin Byerly. He will be starting September 18th with us. So as chief, commanders, and others have shared with all of you the different approaches that we're taking to make sure that we can attract and retain quality officers in our department. So thanks to PD for that part. In our library, it's Library Card Sign-Up Month. We have begun that. And so thanks to Halstead and the team for always kicking that off, as well as the fall session has begun for story time and other library events. So just some examples of things that will be coming up are story time, one-on-one tech help, teen library council, and a movie matinee for seniors, as well as a plant swap at our library. So, and then last but not least, you're gonna be hearing a lot about Tyler coming up with our goal update that we'll have, as well as focus just on Tyler in a few weeks with Kathy and others. But please report that we are on the final stretch for our October launch of our financial module, which is our first one that we've talked about. So we appreciate the council's support both through your goal setting and prioritization of that, as well as bringing resources to help us make sure that we're moving forward. September is now really focused on teammate training and some of the other key things that happen before we go live. So kudos to many people in finance, Kathy and many others who have been really spending a lot of time on this. And that concludes my report this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for City Manager Reimer? No? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the consent agenda. For the Local Contract Review Board, the consent agenda is used for routine items, including minutes and approval of contracts or intergovernmental agreements. Information on each item is available on the city's website in the packet for this meeting. Items may be enacted in one motion without separate discussion. Council members may request that an item be removed by motion for discussion and separate action. Today on the consent agenda, we have a Vactor HXX hydro excavation purchase. I want to see what this awesome machine does. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or a motion?
I hope maybe we can have a cool picture of what the truck does on the side too. But with that, I move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Okay, the motion has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the motion is adopted by unanimous vote of the council. I mean, there was some good details on the AIS kind of about what it does, but I'd like to see because it has to be a massive truck. Maybe request that for Public Works Day next year to come by? I mean, the kids would just think that was so, yes.
Yeah, we'll follow up with some pictures for you in the community.
Okay, thank you. The next item on our agenda is a briefing on the Planning Legislative Work Program, and we have Assistant Community Development Director Tom McGuire to be here with the staff report. Welcome. We still have one of the microphones on.
Yes.
Yeah. We just didn't want the echo.
No, keep that one away. Good evening, Mayor Lube. Good evening, City Councilors. I am Tom McGuire, Assistant Community Development Director, and here to talk to you tonight. I do this every couple of years, or have done this in the past, every couple of years, talk to the council about upcoming legislative projects and kind of what's on the schedule right now. And when I refer to legislative projects, I'm talking about our various very planning focused. Most or all of these will end up with some type of code change in the development code. Some of them are very large projects and involve multiple staff on the team and lots of public involvement. Mostly, I provided a memo that gives a quick summary of each one of those. The ones that are currently underway, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but I'd be happy to answer questions about anything, whether it's on here or not. Mostly I wanted to talk about some things that are coming up in the future. And I feel like I have you all to myself tonight, just about me. And one other thing on the agenda. So first I thought I would mention the FEMA floodplain code update. I did get a question from one of you. I haven't really, I think I've hinted at it coming, but I haven't really talked to you about it yet because it's very complex. It's very, I would say, bureaucratic, and it's just something that we have to do, something we have to swallow. So I was going to leave the details until when we come in before you with the code, so you can kind of see what that is. But very briefly, we all cities in Oregon have to go through a FEMA audit. DLCD, the Department of Land Conservation and Development, a state agency, their staff perform those audits on behalf of FEMA. It's about every 5 years they try to do it, and we just went through one of their audits, and they informed us that they wanted us to make some changes to our FEMA floodplain regulations. That was a surprise to us because in 2017, Washington County updated all of the FEMA maps for Washington County. And when we passed those maps, or adopted those maps, I'm sorry, we made extensive changes to the code that FEMA wanted us to make. So I was a little surprised, but there's more coming. So I will get into much more detail with that when we bring that to you, which will be in a couple of months, probably.
If we have questions on that section, do you want us to ask it now?
Sure.
Does anybody have any questions on or comments on the? Okay.
Okay. The other one I want to mention, you've heard a lot about this one, River Terrace 2.0 Community Plan. We've done a lot of work on River Terrace already, but the community plan, this is where the really important part, this is where we turn all of our ideas and policies and thoughts into development code and regulations, and where we actually have some influence on what gets built on the ground. So excited about that project. We just got awarded the Metro grant, which is going to pay for the bulk of the work. It'll be a rather large consultant team, so we have to go out with the RFP for that. We'll get that team selected, and there's some time getting through the Metro process to get the contract signed and that sort of thing. So I imagine we will get started with that actual community planning project around the end of the year or the first of next year. It's
Can I ask
unusual.
a question about, can we talk a little bit about what the process is or what the community involvement will be in participating in that planning? Because I know they were, pretty involved in the plan that we put forward, but I think, and I will just say as somebody living out in River Terrace, right? Like, I think I have a different perspective living out there and seeing what it could be as we talk about kind of more walkable, accessible areas. And so I'm just wondering community input.
Sure. This one will be Well, there will be some elements of traditional community engagement, which will be like a citizen advisory committee and a technical advisory committee that would run the length of the project, and that would be made up of residents that live out there. Well, there's a whole list of housing advocates and environmental advocates and transportation. There's a whole list of members that we would want to get on that committee. That's a little bit more traditional, but also we want to do some non-traditional and some creative work out there with community involvement. And I can't really tell you what that is right now because we are, as part of this RFP and the consultant team, we will be asking for a community involvement consultant team. And a lot of those specific ideas of what we might do out there would come through that team. But it's going to be very extensive.
Thank you.
And I can say often in these types of community plans, the jurisdiction will talk to the folks in the area where the expansion is and some of the folks around. We're also going to be talking to some other elements of our community in Tigard that may not be traditionally thought of as living in those types of areas and aren't approached or asked their opinion about those types of areas and that type of growth. So that's a little bit of an example of where we're going with that.
I think that would be cool. You know, for I think people who don't go over Bull Mountain, they probably have no idea sort of what really truly is on that other side and what that potential could be of an entirely, you know, extension of Tigard in its own little community on that side. So I think getting other stakeholders could be really cool. Thank you. And anybody have any other? Okay. Yep. Council President who?
I just want to add that it's the Metro Council's expectation, and that's what we intend to do, that we will get historically underrepresented group to get involved in the planning process.
Yes. So that is a large project, very staff intensive, resource intensive, and we have a couple of other projects running right now. The combined now Washington Square Tigard Made project, transitioning into the Tigard Home project, and we have the Downtown Reimagined project. Those are all moving forward right now together, so that's a lot of staff and resources right there. So, and those are going to run for another year, maybe a little less than a year. So as far as future legislative projects, we're looking at July, August, fiscal year 25, most likely. And the next one up on my list has been on my list for a long, long time. It's an important one to me, but a lot of other things, as happens, other things jump the queue or depending on council desires or state legislative adoption for things that we have to do and change in the code. But this is the sensitive lands chapter update. A couple things. Number one, it's one of the most difficult chapters in our development code and has been for years. It has portions of the code where it literally takes you in a circle, the code, and it's been a problem. Luckily, we don't have, some of those regulations are very strict, and other parts of those regulations, they cover wetlands, some habitat, streams, steep slopes, and the floodplains. So thankfully, we haven't seen a lot of development in those areas in Tigard. One of those reasons is those wetland regulations are so strict, but also a lot of those areas have been developed in the past, and there's just not a lot more area to go. But in addition to the code language being a problem, FEMA has another project coming our way, and it started in the, I don't know how much you might have heard about this, it started in the Puget Sound area. FEMA was sued because it was alleged they didn't take fish, salmon habitat into account when they were administering their flood program, the National Flood Insurance Program. And the FEMA lost on that, and a very detailed, extensive fish management plan was developed for Puget Sound. This took many years, and it was approved by FEMA, and then the lawsuit came to Oregon for the same topic, and Oregon also didn't given what the court issued in Washington, there wasn't a lot of pushback from Oregon, but what Oregon did do, again, Department of Land Conservation and Development tried to get out in front of the issue, put together some citizen advisory committees, work with FEMA and the National Marine Fisheries, and they've put out right now a draft ordinance or model code type of thing. It's going to go through extensive review, probably another 6 to 8 months, all around the state. It's not moving really fast, but that is something that we will have to adopt eventually. And I think the timing is looking right. All of that to say, the timing is looking right that it will coincide with our sensitive lands chapter update, so we can fit all of those things together in that update. Additionally, our plan development chapter has needed updating, and some other parts of our land division regulations. As we've been doing, so we've been doing a code update, a modernization of our entire development code pieces at a time. Some of the major pieces have been done, and some of the pieces that have been approved touched on parts of land divisions, but we haven't tied that all together. So because of the relationship between that and sensitive lands, we will do that update at the same time we're doing the sensitive lands chapter. To give you an example of what I mean by that, our plan development code right now does not require any percentage of wetland or forest or streams or anything to be protected or placed in a common open space. It's kind of a negotiation we do project by project, and that's unusual for sensitive lands chapter. Usually that's kind of the point of a plan development, is you're giving some modifications to the code, some benefits to the person developing in exchange for public benefits like preservation of natural features. So our code is pretty far behind on that, so that'll be a major place where we will update. And then the other upcoming project, these are an even more development code focused, kind of almost obscure, but our non-conforming use chapter, which I guess you've heard a lot about now that I think of it, in the MADE project and our sign code both need updates, and that one I've been pushing off, and it's about as long as I can push that off, that we need to get that updated. So the idea is when some of these larger projects that are moving forward now start to wind down, and we can transition to some of these code projects, and that will pretty much be the end, I think, of our code. We will have updated pretty much the entire development code at that time. And then the other project that I've listed on here is not a development code project, but it's very much related, and that's over the past 10 or 12 years, and then going on for the next 2 or 3 years, we're making a lot of changes. A lot of things have happened. You know, when I started here, and we started on legislative projects in 2011, we hadn't adopted our strategic plan. We hadn't talked about Tigard and walkability. We hadn't talked about our climate responses, and those things weren't on the table. The housing crisis, a lot of things have happened, and our comprehensive plan hasn't really kept up with that. I mean, with each project, we do update the comprehensive plan on those specific issues that relate to the project, but the comprehensive plan as a whole, it just needs an update. And there's just a lot that the city is doing that should be reflected in the comprehensive plan that's not right now. So that will be a big project, and that will also be very public involvement intensive.
It's a large document.
Yes. And, for the public, that's that document. We often get some confusion. In land use cases, people will bring in to the planning commission, to the hearings officer, they'll bring in sections out of the comprehensive plan and say, you're not meeting this, and they'll read those off to us. The comprehensive plan is what guides these legislative plans. And the only time we really use the comprehensive plan directly for a project is for a zone change or a comprehensive plan amendment, and then we have to look at the plan goals and policies to guide us on how to make that zone change or comprehensive plan change. All the other development in the city is regulated by the development code. Now, the development code is supposed to be in compliance, and I believe that it is with the comprehensive plan. But it is an important document for setting the stage, setting the whole policy, putting the marker down on what's important to the city, and will guide all future legislative projects going forward from that. So it's an important project.
Councillor Shaw?
Thank you, Assistant Community Development Director McGuire. Question, because this is an area I'm not as familiar with. You had mentioned the sensitive lands chapter in FEMA and how, I liked how you quoted, I think is incomprehensible, and it's just not clear.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that we as a community can look to other cities as well to work together to make it more clear? Is this just an issue that we're not making it clear within our own codes? Or I'm just thinking, because looking at the timeline, and extends way past 2025, so it's an opportunity to act as a coalition here to assist FEMA in becoming more clear. Thank you.
Well, there's kind of two issues there. First is the code not being clear. That's just the way, that happens to be the way Tigard's specific development code is written. Other communities around us have much better written codes. They don't have those conflicts. They're easier to understand. I mentioned the FEMA National Marine Fisheries update just because it's going to coincide, I think, at the same time, and so we can do both of those at the same time rather than updating the sensitive lands chapter and then having to come back another year and open it up again and add more things to it. We should be able to do those both at the same time.
Councillor Wolf?
Thank you, Mayor Lube, and thank you, Assistant Community Development Director McGuire. I am interested in the wetlands. I mean, you and Hope have presented quite often about we're landlocked, here's the amount of land we need to develop based on what our need, and it's completely out of whack. So as you look at, but we need to update it, we need to set aside more wetlands and sensitive lands. How do you see that impact what we are striving to do as we change our code for development, if that makes sense? Because it seems like it's an important aspect, so it's not that I'm opposed, but I'm just curious how much the impact will be.
Well, the good news is most of our industrial and employment land is outside of most of the wetlands. There's a few areas along Fannel Creek, Tigard Street and Fannel Creek where there might be some conflicts. There's the very lower end of Red Rock Creek as it goes under Hunziker and before it connects with Fannel Creek. There's a few areas there as well. But the combination of the one really good thing about and almost too good thing about our sensitive lands chapter is the wetland regulations are very restrictive. And so we've been working with that over the years, and that hasn't necessarily been a big problem for our industrial lands or employment lands or commercial lands. And then the floodplain is maybe affects a little bit more of that land, and we will see how far the regulations go with this FEMA process. I can't really predict what's coming out of that, and we don't have a lot of influence over that. But those tend to be on the edges of properties. So usually you can, if the property's big enough, you can work around that. Previous regulations or some of the regulations that our neighbors have, they will allow, they call it buffer averaging. So you can extend into a wetland or a floodplain buffer a bit more than allowed on one side of the property. If you extend it back on another, further on the other part of the property, there's some mechanisms that get built into that to provide some flexibility for development on individual sites. And we will explore those types of things.
Any additional questions? Yes, Councilor Singh.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to thank you as well for giving us tour, giving the Planning Commission's tour of the Downtown Reimagine, and I'm looking forward to further tours, and it would be great if other city councilors or the mayor wants to go on tour, but just want to thank you for making this process accessible and seeing the tangible on the ground impacts that these planning projects have. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, the tours have been very successful. I've taking advantage of the summer weather and been taking the Planning Commission on a series of tours related to these projects. So.
Yeah, I think it's like the way that the council like maps. It's really helpful to be there and to see and to understand it rather than just trying to picture it in our heads. So I think, the tours that the council have been on have been successful. Council President Hu?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Tom. So one comment and two questions. The comments, I'm very excited to get rid of all the word shall from our codes. I've been advocating that since I got on the Planning Commission 8 years ago. So finally it's happening. So anyway, so one question is, I remember when I was on the Planning Commission hearing a case where I thought it was a loophole where the developer, once he submitted an application, cannot touch any trees on his property. But before he submitted, he could cut down all the trees with no consequences. And in that case, he did cut down all the trees and then submit the application. So is there any consideration to maybe fix that, what I consider a loophole, or is that not?
Well, two things about that. One of those would be we are looking at different ways to update the urban forestry plan that was adopted, that was focused, it was a change of focus to canopy coverage, canopy size. It's been pretty successful with that from what I can see, but it went a little bit too far, and individual trees, so an individual large stature, diameter tree is not getting any more protection than a small tree. It's if you take the big tree down, but you plant enough small trees to cover the same canopy coverage, then you're okay under those regulations. And what we've been hearing from the public is we should probably look into some additional regulations for some, it's going to be, we'll have to figure out where that line is, but larger specimen trees, that type of thing. So that we'll be looking into that through the urban forestry update. I haven't factored that into this table yet. But the other thing that's probably more important is that sensitive lands chapter update. We have a whole inventory of significant tree groves in Tigard. We have inventories of riparian, forest canopy and riparian areas, but the sensitive lands chapter is very weak on regulating those things. The significant tree groves, what was adopted back in the I think around 2005, 2007, something like that, was it was a incentive-based program, purely voluntary, and I don't think anyone's taken advantage of it.
Yeah. And just second questions really quick about the Tigard Home. Since we only touch on the urban agriculture, the chicken code, since we adopt that, do you see any need for the council or the planning commission to revisit that anytime soon, or is that agriculture code been working pretty well as far as you know?
As far as I know, it's been working very well because I've gotten no complaints about it whatsoever.
That's what matters. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
In the case of code updates like that. No news is really good news.
Okay, great. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I would say I haven't heard anything since that adoption either. So that's what I think too. Any additional questions? No? Okay. Thank you, Mr. McGuire. The next item on the agenda is the Los Empresarios de Tigard Spanish language business support, and we have Economic Development Coordinator Tina Escalara and Economic Development Manager Lloyd Purdy here to present the staff report. Welcome.
Good evening, Council. It sounds like we're going to use just one mic because of feedback.
Oh, you can use, you just have to turn them off and on
okay.
sometimes if you hear
Okay.
it. That was my only comment.
Okay. Good evening. I am Lloyd Purdy. I'm the city's Economic Development Manager. I'm here tonight with Tina Escalera, Economic Development Specialist. And I promised I wouldn't tell you this, but she's also one of our Employees of the Month. Congratulations. I'm sorry, can't help it. We're proud of you. Together, we provide a range of business support programs that help Tigard-based business owners and entrepreneurs. Programs like Advanced Tigard, business support scholarships, referrals to business coaches, even the new Tigard Impact Fund. But one of the most interesting and unique economic development programs we provide is Los Empresarios de Tigard, and Tina is going to share some information about that with you tonight. I will tell you that Los Empresarios de Tigard started just before the COVID shutdown. We filled the Burgess Community Room at the Tigard Library with Hispanic entrepreneurs from Tigard, and we invited, I think, a dozen service providers, a dozen organizations like MISO, Adelante Mujeres, the SBA, the SBDC. We brought those partners together to introduce Hispanic entrepreneurs to these resource providers, and it was fabulously successful. And then COVID hit, and we know, as you know, we've then changed much of what we did. So we continued Los Empresarios de Tigard, but we moved it online into a quarterly online webinar. That did fine, but there was a call from entrepreneurs to bring Los Empresarios de Tigard back to an in-person program. And over the last year, Tina has been doing that for us, for the city of Tigard. And that's the introduction. And with that, I'm going to invite Tina to share with you some more information.
Thank you. All right, good evening, Mayor Lube and council members. My name again is Tina Escalera. I am the Economic Development Specialist for the City of Tigard, and I coordinate several programs for the Economic Development team. And I'm going to introduce you to one of them today, which is Los Empresarios de Tigard. So Los Empresarios de Tigard is a quarterly workshop that is ran completely in Spanish. It is designed to empower and connect Latino business owners. We have found that by running these workshops, it provides essential support to Latino entrepreneurs in a familiar language. And here are 3 benefits of Los Empresarios de Tigard. By offering the workshops in Spanish, we do remove language barriers that often hinder effective communication and learning. It creates more inclusive atmosphere where Spanish-speaking entrepreneurs can fully participate and gain valuable insights. Los Empresarios de Tigard connects business owners with each other. It creates an environment where they can exchange ideas, experiences, and resources. These connections create a sense of community and provide access to a network that understands the unique challenges faced by Latino entrepreneurs. We collaborate with experts from various fields, nonprofits, and other small business development programs. This exposure not only brings valuable knowledge to our workshops, but it also allows these resource providers to connect directly with Spanish-speaking entrepreneurs, expanding their reach and impact. Los Empresarios de Tigard contributes to the prosperity of the city. It empowers Spanish-speaking entrepreneurs, fosters economic growth, and strengthens the bonds within our diverse community. Out of this, we have also created a Los Empresarios leadership group, which is made up of 4 Latino business owners in Tigard. We meet before and after our meetings. We discuss what went well and what we can improve on and what topics were heard that might be good for a next event. At our last meeting, we did have organizations such as Owami and Latino Build come and discuss their resources that they have available. And we also had Business Impact Northwest come and give tips on how to get a business loan, as well as talk about our new business loan fund that we have in partnership with them. Our next meeting is scheduled for October 26th. We plan to discuss creative marketing, social media on there as well. And in closing, I'm just sharing the 3 benefits of Los Empresarios de Tigard, which are language comfort, networking opportunities, and exposure to business resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Does the council have any questions about this program that we could answer at this time?
Other than it's awesome and incredible and doing good work. I want to say that the Hispanic Chamber, who was here earlier, actually invited myself in honor of all of the work that Tigard is doing to their event this Friday. I think, and that's an incredible testament to our city team and to Tina, who's doing a really incredible job at reaching those community members who've been left behind and ensuring that they succeed. So that it's an amazing testament to you. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah, Councillor Shaw.
Yeah, thank you. Impressive program. And I'm so thrilled too about the partnerships you've developed with Impact Northwest, but also OWAMI, which is the Oregon Association of Minority Entrepreneurs. It's an excellent program, really helps those businesses ground themselves, adds the diversity. So really exciting. So just want to say thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Anyone else? Okay. No additional questions or comments. But thank you for highlighting the program. Hopefully, maybe, we can help spread the word and bring additional entrepreneurs in. Thank you. We don't have any non-agenda items this evening. We will be going into executive session to discuss the performance review of a public official under ORS 192-6602I. All discussions are confidential, and those present may disclose nothing from the session. Representatives of the news media are allowed to attend executive sessions as provided by ORS 192-6604, but must not disclose any information discussed. No executive session may be held for the purpose of taking any final action or making any final decision, and executive sessions are closed to the public. We will be adjourning from the executive session. So thank you so much. Good night, Tigard.